Hello, everybody. How you doing today? This is Sakoni Prince, and I am super excited to welcome you to another episode of the H.E.A.L podcast. H.E.A.L is an acronym for Help, Elevate, and Learn, and it's a guide for healing your inner child. And it's actually based on my best-selling book by the same title, H.E.A.L. I can't tell you how excited I am to be able to actually share this journey with you about understanding the importance of inner child healing, which comes from inner child wounds and inner child trauma. But I am super excited about our guest today, and I can't wait to introduce you to him. And so we're going to get to that in a second. But I do have to also mention our sponsor, none other than BetterHelp. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/SakoniPrinceHeal. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who's had years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or your computer, via a phone call, a video chat, or messaging. However you feel most comfortable. It is the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/SakoniPrinceHeal or choose Sakoni Prince Heal during your sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. So again, in fact, we want to thank BetterHelp for being our sponsor of our podcast. And I can't tell you how excited I am to have our guest today. He's none other than Arron Muller, but I'm going to bring him up and let him introduce himself. Arron, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. So glad to have you, man. Tell people about you.
Yes. Oh, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Arron Muller, known as the Black Therapist, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, adjunct professor, and just overall mental health advocate. I've been in the field for over 20 plus years. Just different modalities. I've done community mental health, substance abuse. I've done some administration, school social work, and private practice. And now I am the CEO of Modified Wellness. And that is a nonprofit that addresses mental health in the communities. We're doing events and conversations, just having conversations around mental health and wellness, specifically in the Black community.
Well, I definitely want to thank you for the work that you put in with helping us to get to a better place and a better space when it comes to our mental health. And I'm super excited to have you because I know that you have some information that's definitely going to help our audience. So I do want to run through a couple of questions, but I know that you're going to share more information than just what the question is. But the first one is, in your professional opinion, how important is inner child healing?
Inner child healing is truly important. It's it's a therapeutic process that addresses unmet needs, uh, whether it be so it could be positive or negative, kind of experiences that someone have in their life. But oftentimes, we kind of focus on the negative ones that haven't been processed adequately, and they can manifest as emotional problems, behavioral, even relationship issues. So it's truly important to kind of address it. And I do believe that inner child healing is an ongoing process. We talk about healing so much, and there's notions that there's kind of this finish line, right? So there's the black and white flag that you finish healing, right? So how do I finish it? We're conditioned to want to complete task and to be task oriented. But in terms of healing, I do believe, in my professional opinion, that is something that is ongoing. That's something that we continue to work on. Oftentimes, situations come up where it doesn't look like the traditional way, but you still have those experiences and those feelings, and oftentimes it catches you off guard. So that's why I say that healing is ongoing, something that we continue to monitor, continue to address, continue to work on, so that it's so that you're aware of it. Because when you sleep on it, you kind of just feel like, oh, no, I don't have to worry about it no more. But it's something that is ongoing, and not to say that you can't move process and kind of achieve it, I'm not saying that, but definitely is something that is ongoing, and that's something to be mindful of at all times.
Yeah, and that's so true. One of the things I found is that I run into a lot of individuals, adults, that are that their current day behavior was based on something that happened in their childhood.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, they don't see the connection, between what happened then and how they respond, or should I say, how they react now. And
Yes.
so, being able to actually kind of have those conversations and really raise their awareness, of their response. Because oftentimes, you ask people, well, why did that, cause you to respond that way? Well, that's just where I am, and I tell people all the time, it's not what you do, but why you do it. If you never understand why you do something, you'll keep repeating it, and
Yes.
you'll just chalk it up to the fact that, well, that's just where I am.
Yeah.
There's a reason behind it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So, in your professional opinion, when should someone start inner child work?
Yeah. Well, it depends on how's it impacting you. We can say that everyone has experienced something during their childhood, but how you managing it as an adult. There's
Right.
some that have the resilience and been able to pursue and push through, and it's not impacting them severely. So I would say look at and scale how it's impacting you as an adult. Are you having challenges managing your emotions? Do you find a difficulty maintaining relationships, friendships, challenges at work, anxiety, depression, substance abuse, things of that nature? That's something to be mindful of. And acknowledging it. So that's one of the biggest things is how to address inner child healing. Is you have to acknowledge it, right? Acknowledge that I have something that I need to work on, I need to address, and it could stem from my childhood. So, like you said, is the connection. Oftentimes, that's just who I am. Sometimes we play into account that's how my mom was, or that's how my dad was, or
Right. Right.
that's that's the environment. And as a social worker, I look at all those different dynamics,
Mm,
of course. But naturally, you have to pay attention to connecting it to your childhood, and recognizing that possibly this is why I'm responding this way. It could be, those factors as well. But that's something to address, and kind of see where is it coming from specifically.
right. I remember I had, in fact, one guest on the show, and she said, if it's hysterical, it's historical. And not the
Mhm.
hysterical like the laughing, but if someone just kind of goes off the deep end or they go overboard, it was a trigger. Something happened that triggered something that happened to them in the past. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, being aware and being able to identify that, I believe is so important, because like I tell people all the time, is your current behavior, is it being affected by something that was in your past? So yeah, you definitely have to be aware of it. We have to be mindful of it. In fact, but then, in fact, we also have to take action in order
Yes.
to address it, and in fact, get the tools we need. And that really brings me to another question: is do you think somebody can do inner child healing on their own?
I mean, I think that's a great question. Um, even as a therapist, do I say that therapy is the absolute way? I think there are a number of ways that people can work on their healing and addressing um, what they're going through. Now, the professional can kind of help navigate that in terms of engaging in dialogue, giving them tools and having those conversations. So I think initially, I think it's truly important to have that professional um, to explore with you and unpack some of
Mm,
those traumas, because alone it may be a little bit challenging.
yeah,
Um, so I do believe that it's now, after you've really come to an understanding, now there's other things that you can kind of do to maintain that wellness and maintain that journey. But I do believe initially it is truly helpful. If someone is, have a herniated disc, we could do all the remedies at home, but at some point you do need to uh, check with a doctor, especially if the pain persists and it's not getting better.
right,
Definitely, then you want to seek a professional to kind of help
right,
you unpack that, because there may be some deep, intense work you need to do, especially like it shows up differently. So if there's some trauma, you know, how do you how do you deal with that? How do you work through that? So it might be some techniques that you have to learn from a professional.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I sincerely value individuals who not only deal with their own trauma, but they have stepped up to the plate to help somebody else walk through theirs. And
Hmm.
that's one of the reasons why my hats are off to therapists and people like yourself who actually, I mean, take on the monumental task of helping somebody else get better by going through their own struggles.
Hmm.
You know, I remember this one lady was on here and she talked about being a first responder, but a mental health first responder. So it's like when they called her, I mean, they were in crisis mode. You had somebody that
Hmm.
was almost suicidal, somebody that was acting out, somebody that was having an episode, and she had to be the one to come in, assess the situation, and try to de-escalate and calm them down. And again, just like the firefighters, the police officers, the emergency medical services, how they come in the most tragic times, it
Hmm.
seems like even from a mental health standpoint, those individuals who do that and who are willing to go through that with somebody else,
Yeah.
again, I believe y'all are heroes. So thank you again.
Thank
So,
you.
well, in fact, you're welcome. So, what do you believe is the biggest obstacle, when it comes to doing inner child healing?
Uh, stigma around it, right? Acknowledging that something is wrong, even though there's so many conversations and everybody's talking about mental health, there's still a level of, well, not me, I don't have that issue,
Right,
so acknowledging that, and then really saying that my parent or whoever raised you didn't provide you with the tools, right? Or you felt neglected. So uh, even if you tried to have the conversation and you were shunned by that person, it could kind of say, you know what, I'm not going to address it no more, and kind of ignore it. So, you
right,
know, those are a few reasons, and access again to address it. So you may recognize it, but where do I go to get the help? Uh, you know, there's not enough therapists, or I can't find one that accept my insurance, or those reasons can
right,
also impact someone from getting the help.
right, right. Well, I know in recent years, mental health has kind of become, in the forefront, especially with high profile people like even like Simone Biles, she took off from the Olympics because of her mm, mental health. And I think that it's becoming more accepted that that needs to be a part of our self-care.
Hmm.
We've had gyms forever. We've talked about diet and we've gone to the doctor, but being able to actually make sure that you are mentally okay and mentally well is another aspect, because even you talked about anxiety, in fact depression, all those things come from that part of ourselves that if we haven't done a check on, we can find ourselves in a place that we really don't want to be. And then like you just said about the stigma around it. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast. And another reason why I wanted to write this book. And there was a particular reason why I chose the cover art, because I wanted it to make, I wanted to allow for a platform to where people that look like us can say, you know what, I need to talk about my mental health. You know what, I need to check on myself and make it commonplace. Because one thing I found, even since I wrote the book, even since I've been doing this podcast, that people like you and I, black men, talking about in fact mental health are few and far between. And I definitely want to again start the conversation about mental health in our community, because I know it's needed. I know we've overlooked it for the longest time, and like you said, there was a stigma surrounding it. But the reality is, it's still there, and it still impacts us, and even our children you know. Uh, so I just want to make sure, in fact, that we are not perpetuating a situation or a stereotype that will not allow them to get the help they need.
Mm-hmm.
So, so how does trauma show up in life and in relationships? I know you kind of hit on that a little earlier,
I did.
but can you give, some more specifics on, I guess, you know, if it actually, I mean, severely impacts a relationship, if it causes you to not be able to function, even on work, even in your job, you know, in fact, you may have somebody that, in fact, reminds you of someone that abused you, whether verbally or emotionally or physically, that you work for, and and
Mm-hmm.
and they're your coworker, or they're your supervisor, or someone else. So how does trauma really impact relationships across the board?
Well, yeah. So it impacts interpersonally and relationships and professionally.
Mm,
Difficulty managing emotions. So there's emotional dysregulation. So you may see, someone that is responding uh, what we call high emotion, which it may not necessarily warrant that, but an inability to manage those emotions. You may see low self worth and self criticism, self sabotage,
mm,
um, inability to kind of see their inner worth despite all that they achieve. They still feel like they're not measuring, still feel like they haven't accomplished a lot in life.
right.
Unhealthy patterns in relationships, difficulty forming secure attachments, right? So it may be when they can get connected to someone, then they drop the relationship because we're getting too close, or they may forge relationships with people very quickly and become attached very quickly, right?
Mm,
Having those insecure attachments, repetitive and self-sabotaging behavior, like I said before. So just unhealthy, whether it be substance abuse or some type of even obsessive compulsive disorder. So rituals and things like that, just because of the anxiety and depression, or whatever symptoms they're going through, it can manifest in different behaviors.
okay, okay. As you were talking, I thought about my journey, my personal development journey, really started, in fact, when I was in college, and I was in this relationship, in fact, with this young lady, and the relationship went south, and wound up ending the relationship. But instead of spending a whole lot of time, for lack of a better term, blaming her, I started to question myself. I
Mm.
started to ask myself, Sakona, why is it that in most of the relationships you've been in, it was a woman that ended it? And I didn't have all the answers, but I definitely started asking the right questions. And I tell people, you can't get the right answers until you ask the right questions. And we can question everybody else, but rarely do we question ourselves.
Mhm.
And so I'm a huge advocate of self-reflection, of being able to actually go through a process where you, in a non-threatening moment, you can actually take inventory of yourself, of your actions, and you know understand you better. And like I tell people all the time, if you're just doing this to appease somebody else, you're doing it for the wrong reason, because it needs to be done for you,
Yeah.
so that you can be better and you can feel better about yourself. Because the best thing you can do in any relationship, whether it's a coworker, whether it's a family member, in fact, whether it's your spouse, your children, is you can be the best version of yourself. That helps them. But
Yeah.
when you're not that, you show up and you become more of a liability than an asset.
Yeah.
So, this last question is,
Hmm.
how can how can someone help somebody else that's struggling to identify their need for inner child help?
So one is not being judgmental, right? Or how you approach it. How do you have that conversation with them? So
Right,
in the heat of the kind of an argument or situation, it's like, that's why you need to go address it from your childhood. Like, that's not the best way, right? You would vandalize it, kind of making them the
right,
villain. And that's just not the most healthiest approach.
right,
Oftentimes in a calmer situation, having conversations, if you know the history, then kind of broaching that topic. If you don't, again, asking questions. If you may recognize that look like something, and you want to get to know them a little bit more, start asking those questions and having a conversation with them. And even if you self-disclose that, I've experienced that, and this is how I addressed it. Oftentimes that helps.
Right.
Kind of, they say, "Wow, I didn't know you experienced that." Oftentimes people are not disclosing uh, their traumas, or
Right.
and rightfully so. But
Right. Right.
again, depending on the level of relationship with this person, you can kind of start to have that conversation, and it's definitely something that takes time. It's not going to be immediate, where they're going to say, "Okay, I'm a go." It is going to take time for them to unpack that, right? Especially if they've stuffed it for protection purposes, put it
Right.
away, right?
Right.
So, nobody wants to dwell on that on a daily basis. So you kind of ignore it. It didn't happen, or, try to move on as best as you can. But if you do, see that in someone, there are healthy ways to nurture and support them. And then for the individual themselves, that is find that they have some inner child work, is that you want to begin to start to nurture and love that inner child. Um, Visualize yourself as a young person, and what can you say to them? That's a question I ask a lot of clients. Is like, what would you tell your 7-year-old self, right? What would you tell your
Mhm.
9-year-old self? And the part of the biggest healing is being able to speak positively to yourself, uh, provide safety that you weren't protected at 7 or 8. I did not deserve that. But provide the love, and that may come through positive affirmations, creating a safe space for yourself, and internally and in your home, right? So this is my man cave, or your woman cave, and this is where I go, and this is where I meditate, I pray, and this is where I
Right.
can have conversations with myself. So there are things that people can do to support those dealing with inner child wounds, but also the individual. There's work that you can do on your own, and first acknowledging it. It is not your fault, and that inner healing begins with you, and that you deserve that, uh, to move forward and lead a healthier life.
Right. That's absolutely right. And I oftentimes tell people that what happened to you may not have been your fault, but it is your responsibility. And what I mean by that is it's your responsibility to heal from it. It may not have been your fault what happened to you, but you have the responsibility to heal. That's on you. You getting the help you need, you doing the work necessary for you to be better and for you to be free from that type of, mindset, from that type of version and vision of yourself. It's your responsibility,
Hmm.
because if you're waiting on the person that abused you in whatever way, if you're waiting on them, if they had to come and actually help you heal, you may be waiting a long time.
Hmm.
But if you really want to be the best version of yourself, if you don't want to be locked in somebody's opinion of you, then it's on you. It's on us individually for us to get the help we need, and not just get the help, but to do the work. Because even a therapist can only do so much. We have to be willing to go beyond what it is we are facing and actually try to become the best version of ourselves. I'm gonna share this with you, and then we're gonna wrap up. I had a total hip replacement back in 2017, and the physical therapist that came into my hospital room after I had the surgery, he said something that was real telling for me. He
Hmm.
said that there's a difference between pain and soreness. He
Mm.
said before you had pain, he said, now we need to push past the soreness so you can get the full range of motion in your hip. Because, of course, when you start bending and twisting and turning my hip, I'm thinking, oh, it's still there. He said, no, no, no. This is soreness. We have to push past that. And that helped me to endure the pain of
Hmm.
the soreness so I could get back to where it is I wanted to be. And honestly, I really didn't even think about the surgery until after it was over, because I was too busy thinking about the life that I could get back to. I was too busy thinking about the mobility that I would have after I had the surgery, because prior to the surgery, I could only walk maybe 2 or 3 blocks, and I had to sit down, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so even from our mental health, we have to see the life we can live, the level of freedom and happiness that we can actually not only enjoy ourselves but share with other people. And that's why
Absolutely.
we, yeah, that's why in fact we have to go through the hurt and the pain of our own healing, so that on the other side of that, not only can we heal, but we can be a beacon light of hope for somebody else that may have gone through a similar situation or facing something to where they don't believe they can. They need to know it's possible, and I think that that's all of our in fact responsibility. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
man, listen, I am again so appreciative and thankful that you took some time out of your busy schedule, in fact, to be on our podcast. And if anybody wanted to actually connect with you, follow you, see what you got going on, how would they do that?
Yeah, so you could check me on Instagram, the black_therapist.
Okay.
So I post, resources and tips and uh, conversations and around mental health. My website, modifywellness.org. That's my nonprofit.
Okay.
And in New York, I'm on the radio every Friday at 6:30 a.m. Around 6:25, 6:30. I do the mental health moment on 94.7 The Block, and it's during the Miss Jones Morning Show, and I provide a topic or some type of kind of conversation, motivational kind of quote to kind of get your weekend started in the right way. So, and I'm on the Jamal Bates Morning Show. That is a Christian radio show. So you can check me on my IG with all that information. And I do Men Mondays on there. So I do content specifically for men and men's mental health.
Okay. Well, cool, cool. Hey, man, listen, again, I want to personally thank you for all of the work that you're doing to help our community in fact become better. And again, I think there is no greater task that I think that we can take up than helping somebody else.
Yes.
And of course that reminds me of the scripture that says, like, no greater love have a man than this, than to lay down his life for his friends. And so you being willing to actually step into this arena and actually be a actual voice, uh, I think again it's more than commendable, and I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, in fact, before we get out of here, I do have to mention our sponsor again is none other than BetterHelp. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/SaconiPrinceHeal. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who's had years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or your computer, via a phone call, a video chat, or messaging. However you feel most comfortable. It is the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/SaconiPrinceHeal or choose Saconi Prince Heal during your sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. Well, in fact, Mr. Muller, I do want to give you an opportunity just in case you had a closing word for our audience. If you wanted to share that, in fact, you can do that now.
Yeah, so I think this topic is so important. For those who are listening, please share with someone that you feel could benefit from this. Inner child healing and inner child wounds is something that uh, everyone may experience, but it is not something to be ashamed of, and that there is help, and that there's another side of that, opportunity to work through and gain the skills and how to manage those emotions, those high emotions when you feel it. So please, this is, if you didn't think that you had something that you need to address, this is a sign that, hey, maybe I need to tap into that and work through the inner child so that you can thrive as an adult.
Okay, all right. Well, again, like Mr. Muller, thank you so much for being on our show. And for everybody who's tuned in, those who are listening on Spotify or iHeartRadio, or those who are watching on my YouTube channel, I want to thank you so much, and we will see you next week.